84-year-old Jones, he currently has 22 girlfriends, you guys.
People often assume that your 80s and 90s are a time to seek quietude, leaving behind the madness of carnal desire. But behind the glamour of Hollywood or lavish music empires, the rules of aging seem completely meaningless. Hidden beneath the silver hair of these legendary black icons is a fiery underworld where physical lust has become an incurable addiction. Having navigated countless broken marriages and a string of shocking scandals, their twilight years are not a peaceful harbor. Instead, they are always accompanied by vibrant, youthful beauties, decades their junior. Let's tear away that proud, dignified facade to enter an immortal game of love, where furious lust is the clearest proof of a thirst for youth that refuses to sleep. 23. Ron Isley, Mr. Biggs, Elixir of Youth. When it comes to black R&B monuments who have entered their 80s, Ron Isley is always a name that commands respect. Throughout a music career spanning over 6 decades, this man has never hidden his true nature as a sophisticated, romantic gentleman who always craves the warmth of beautiful women. Ron's romantic history is a long-running soap opera of whirlwind marriages and passing lovers, proving a fierce predatory instinct that seems utterly immune to age. To him, romance and lust are not just emotions, they are his lifeblood. Step into a lavish Beverly Hills mansion in the early 2000s, amidst an atmosphere thick with premium cigars, cognac, and a pulsating R&B bassline. Ron Isley sat there like a king. Though in his 60s, the eyes hidden behind his glossy black sunglasses remained sharp, burning with the fire of carnal ambition. Having just breezed past his marriage to Margaret Tinsley and leaving behind legendary singer Angela Winbush after a passionate decade, Mr. Biggs had no intention of resting. He craved a more radiant, youthful energy to satisfy his primal demands. And then, the gaze of this seasoned hunter landed on Candy Johnson, his young protege from the girl group JS, whom he was mentoring. You could feel the atmosphere practically combusting with palpable sexual tension whenever they shared a frame, from the lightest touch to the proud, possessive smirk of a highly experienced man. Ignoring all the gossip, Ron walked down the aisle with the singer, who is exactly 35 years his junior, in 2005. Today at 85, an age where most seek peace in a retirement home, Mr. Biggs is still enjoying passionate nights with a young wife bursting with vitality. The birth of his son, Ronald Isley Jr., shortly after the wedding, was the most resounding proof of the legendary singer's formidable virility. It seems that for Ron Isley, the burning flame of romance beside a younger woman isn't just a hobby, it's an elixir of youth that helps him permanently maintain the power of an undefeated player against the wheels of time. 22. Berry Gordy, the Motown Godfather's Empire of Romance. Berry Gordy, born in 1929, is not only the founder of the great Motown music empire, but also a true king in his own world of pleasure. If Motown's music captivated millions of hearts, Berry himself dedicated his life to the captivation of beautiful women. His romantic history is as massive and complex as the discography he produced. 3 official marriages, countless passionate flings, and 8 children with 6 different women. For the godfather of Motown, ultimate power didn't just lie in dictating a superstar's career, but seemingly in the ability to satisfy an insatiable thirst for conquest. Picture Berry Gordy's Bel Air mansion during the most glorious years of the 70s. Under the sparkling crystal chandeliers, with soul music softly weaving through bubbling champagne glasses, Berry sat in a velvet-upholstered armchair like an emperor surveying his kingdom. The aura around him always exuded a dangerous magnetism. His gaze, sharp, intense, and profoundly possessive, slowly traced the exquisite curves of young female singers just stepping into the industry. It was often whispered that stepping into Berry's protective embrace sometimes meant stepping into a highly seductive game of love. His fiery, obsessively publicized romance with the legendary Diana Ross was truly just the tip of the iceberg. In the shadows of the wings, or behind the closed doors of soundproof studios, Berry was a tireless hunter, always searching for that blazing, youthful life force to fill the boiling desires in his veins. Now, as he navigates his 90s, approaching 100, the marks of time are deeply etched into his frame, but the playboy fire in the billionaire's eyes seems to have never extinguished. Instead of choosing to retreat and rest like other seniors, Berry Gordy continues to maintain his dashing lifestyle. In his rare public appearances, he is never without gorgeous, glamorous women decades younger than him. The public might balk at the massive age gap, but for Berry, those youthful beauties are the very heartbeat that sustains his empire. It serves as an unspoken declaration. The power, the charm, and the intense demands of the Motown godfather are an endless current, arrogantly defying the limits of biology and time. 21. Quincy Jones. An intercontinental symphony of lust. Quincy Jones was not just a musical monolith with 28 Grammy Awards, but also a notorious playboy with an addiction to women that seemingly never went to rehab. Behind the classic arrangements for Michael Jackson or Frank Sinatra, Quincy's life was a long chain of romantic conquests. 3 official marriages and 7 children with 5 different women were only the visible surface. The truth is, this great conductor never tolerated a single day without the warmth, caresses, and pure pleasure of beautiful women. In 2018, inside a quiet multi-million-dollar Bel Air mansion, a GQ journalist was invited for an interview. If you stood in the corner of that room, you would have seen Quincy Jones, despite being 85 with snow-white hair and deep wrinkles, still exuding the danger of an apex predator. Slouching in his armchair, casually swirling a glass of wine, Quincy suddenly leaned toward the reporter. Without an ounce of hesitation, he smirked and dropped a bomb. "I have 22 girlfriends." You could see the old maestro's eyes flash with triumph as he mapped out his romantic conquests. He counted on his fingers: Cape Town, Cairo, Stockholm, Brazil, Shanghai. Wherever he went, he had smoking hot bodies waiting in bed. When the flustered reporter asked about their ages, Quincy let out a hearty, deeply carnal laugh. He casually bragged about his new Egyptian girlfriend who was only 19 years old. Imagine an 85-year-old man loudly boasting about sleeping with a teenager young enough to be his great-granddaughter. Hell, 66-year age difference? "I control everything," Quincy boldly stated. He explicitly detailed how he funded these girls and set the rules. They all knew about each other. There was no fidelity here, only an aging man so starved for carnal desire that he used his power and fame to tether 22 young girls across the globe, purely to satisfy his primal hunger. Quincy Jones recently passed away in late 2024, closing the 91-year journey of a legend. Yet, right up to the final years of his life, he was still spoken of as living proof of the fury of lust. Even as his body aged and his heartbeat slowed, the craving to immerse himself in the flesh of younger women never stopped boiling in Quincy's veins. For him, women and sex weren't just hobbies. They were the oxygen he absolutely had to breathe to prove he was still living like a true king. 20. Morgan Freeman, the midnight drive that tore the God persona apart. Morgan Freeman has always appeared on screen as the embodiment of calmness, wisdom, and authority. Hollywood even cast him as God. But stepping behind the lens, that God was a mere mortal, besieged by uncontrollable carnal desires. In stark contrast to his famously soothing, healing baritone voice, Morgan's love life was a string of cheating scandals that spanned across 2 marriages. Behind the gentle smile, he was a man addicted to the thrill of the chase, always craving youthful curves, and seemingly never satisfied with just one woman. In August 2008, the summer air in Mississippi was stifling and thick. After a dinner party at a friend's house, Morgan Freeman, then 71, decided not to return to the mansion where his wife of 24 years, Myrna Colley Lee, was waiting. Instead, he slid into a Nissan Maxima with Damaris Meyer, an alluring beauty he had just locked eyes on at the party. If you had been sitting in the back seat that night, you wouldn't have seen a man in his 70s. Hands lazily draped over the steering wheel, he leaned toward Damaris. Using that legendary hypnotic baritone, he whispered wet, flirtatious lines into her ear. Under the dim streetlights, the hunter's eyes roamed over the woman's body, flashing the half-smile of someone used to never letting his prey escape. The atmosphere in the car was burning with a surging physical desire. But that wild night of lust came at the cost of a horrific physical shock, a moment of distraction, and the car swerved, flipped multiple times, and was crushed in a ditch. The crash didn't just break Morgan's arm, it utterly shattered his mask of the faithful gentleman. The next morning, images of the esteemed actor being pulled from the wreckage with his mistress plastered the tabloids, officially igniting a sensational divorce that split hundreds of millions of dollars. Today, well into his 90s, one might expect Morgan Freeman to choose a quiet, settled life. But no, losing hundreds of millions in a divorce couldn't cool his playboy blood. Even with snow-white hair and a beard, he continued to be the center of numerous allegations of making suggestive comments, inappropriately touching female assistants, and staring at young reporters' chests. Even into his twilight years, the actor's eyes remained glued to youthful, vibrant bodies. It seems that for Morgan, the craving to be touched and surrounded by beautiful young women is an instinct etched into his marrow, a raging fire that burns forever, defying every boundary of old age. 19. Lionel Richie, The Fateful Midnight Knock and the Ballad of Betrayal. Lionel Richie once melted the hearts of millions of women worldwide with smooth, romantic ballads like Hello or Endless Love. But behind that gentle smile and the image of a devoted man was a guy consumed by carnal lust and taboo romantic adventures. For Lionel, a loyal, supportive wife who had been by his side since his days of poverty was seemingly never enough to suppress his wild instincts. He craved stimulation, craved new curves, and was willing to trade his entire reputation to drown in illicit pleasure. Let's rewind to the early hours of a June morning in 1988. The setting: a secluded luxury suite at the Beverly Hills Hotel. If you had been hiding in the dim corner of that room, you would have seen Lionel Richie, a superstar at the absolute peak of his fame, lost in the ecstasy of his smoking hot mistress, Diane Alexander. Completely disregarding his legal wife, Brenda Harvey, who was waiting at home, Lionel drunkenly indulged in the sweet, guilty pleasure. The room was heavy with the scent of expensive wine, women's perfume, and the physical heat of two bodies wrapped around each other. And then, a deafening crash shattered that highly erotic atmosphere. The door was kicked open. Brenda Harvey burst in like a furious hurricane. In that split second, all the blood drained from the superstar's face. A violent struggle erupted amidst piercing screams. The police had to break the door down to control the chaos. The image of a wife storming in to unleash her vengeance on her cheating husband and his mistress in a room reeking of sex became the most shocking jealousy scandal in Hollywood history. The shell of the faithful gentleman was ripped away entirely, exposing a player willing to trample on an 18-year marriage just to satisfy a fleeting, animalistic urge. Following the scandal, Lionel married his mistress, Diane. But that second marriage also ended in a divorce that cost tens of millions of dollars. Today, approaching 80, his hair turning gray, Lionel still cannot live without the warmth of a woman. He proved to the world that his addiction to love has never been cured by publicly stepping out hand in hand with model Lisa Parigi. The kicker that left the public's jaws on the floor? Lisa is 40 years younger than Lionel. Every time he hits the red carpet, wrapping his arm around the waist of a bombshell young enough to be his daughter, Lionel's eyes still flash with the pride of a majestic predator. Despite the wrinkles of time on his face, he still uses his wealth and magnetism to tether a vibrant, youthful beauty. For Lionel Richie, passionate nights with a lover 4 decades his junior aren't just about feelings. They are the perfect doping to maintain his vitality, proving the prowess of a playboy who remains undefeated by the wheel of time. 18. Stevie Wonder, love songs and the instincts of a seasoned player. Stevie Wonder is a musical genius who changed the face of global soul and R&B. But behind the dark glasses and soaring melodies is a man with a complex, chaotic love life that rivals his grandest musical stages. With 9 children by 5 different women and having gone through 3 official marriages, Stevie was never a man of tranquility. He is like an endless current of energy, constantly seeking connection, possession, and the warmth of women to feed both his artistic inspiration and his primal instincts. Take his luxurious 2017 wedding in Los Angeles. It was the 3rd time Stevie Wonder had walked down the aisle. Amidst a space overflowing with fresh flowers and music, Stevie, then 67, tightly held the hand of Tamika Robin Bracey, his young wife, who was 24 years his junior. If you stood nearby, you would have seen the triumph in the legend's smile. He wasn't just getting married, he was asserting his status as a wielder of romantic power. Every guest there understood that this wasn't just a wedding. To Stevie, Tomika was the latest piece in his collection of beauties he had experienced over the years. Those familiar with Stevie's private life often say he is the type of man who needs to be surrounded by young women. He despises the barrenness of old age. He needs vibrancy and freshness to feel like a virile man. The fact that he has 9 children with 5 women is hard evidence of just how powerful his instinct to sow his seeds and his need for physical intimacy truly are. At the reception, he acted like a king, basking in the admiration and desire of his guests, while his hands never left his radiantly alive, youthful wife. Now at 74, while his peers have chosen to fade into the shadows, Stevie Wonder continues to keep the media endlessly curious about his family life. The fact that he is tied to a young wife, who is the exact same age as his oldest daughter, is an ironclad testament to his addiction to youth. For Stevie, home is never a place to rest quietly, but rather a place to draw fresh energy from a partner over 2 decades younger. Insiders often whisper that Tomika's youth is the medicine that maintains Stevie's form, helping him feel like he is still at his absolute peak, not just in music, but in the highly instinctual game of love. 17. Smokey Robinson, the dashing trader and backstage secrets. Smokey Robinson is one of the greatest legends of the Motown Empire, a man who penned melodies that mesmerized the globe. However, if his songs carry the beauty of loyalty and romance, Smokey's real life is a saga filled with moral missteps. Having gone through 2 marriages and countless illicit affairs, Smokey is not the type of man to settle down. Behind that delicate face and emotional voice is a man who constantly craved conquest, driven by a powerful sexual instinct and a lifestyle that rejected the confines of traditional marriage. In the early 70s, when Smokey was at the height of his career with the Miracles, a peek into his private life would have revealed a horrific fracture behind the glamour of a star. Even though he publicly appeared with his wife, Claudette Rogers, who had been by his side since his early days, Smokey's mind and body were nowhere to be found at home. During a tour, he spent the night with another woman, a secret affair whose consequences even he couldn't predict. The result of that night of debauchery was the birth of an illegitimate child. When the news broke, the media of that era was violently shaken. People saw Claudette utterly devastated, while Smokey floundered with the weak excuses of a man caught red-handed. That night, in the lavish hotel room, the silence between the two wasn't forgiveness. It was the sound of a 27-year marriage shattering. It was the moment the truth was laid bare. Smokey, despite singing of undying love, was a man always ready to abandon his family's happiness to satisfy a fleeting, fleshly urge. Today, at 84, Smokey Robinson has absolutely no intention of retiring from romance. After divorcing his second wife, he continues to maintain the image of an elegant but highly dangerous gentleman. Those around Smokey still whisper that, even though age has carved every wrinkle, he remains a profoundly seductive predator. The fact that he once publicly admitted his past mistakes didn't change him. Conversely, it only proved that his sexual instinct is an addiction he cannot kick. Smokey lives the life of a man who always needs novelty, who needs the warmth of youth to feel that he still holds power, that he is still the prince in an endless game of love. 16. Ben Vereen, the bigamy play and the instinct of a Broadway artist. Ben Vereen, a Broadway stage legend who won a prestigious Tony Award and conquered audiences with his masterful dance moves and chameleon-like acting. However, while the stage lights were reserved for his talent, Ben's private life was a theatrical play of deceit and uncontrollable lust. He couldn't just be satisfied with one woman. The instinct of an artist forever thirsting for novelty pushed him into one of the most bizarre and shocking personal scandals in entertainment history: bigamy, being married to 2 women at the same time without either knowing. In the 70s, when Ben was at the absolute peak of his fame, imagine standing in the wings of a Broadway theater right after he finished a scorching performance. Sweat still dripping from his skin, his eyes still burning with the high of a man who had just conquered thousands in the audience. At that moment, Ben wasn't just thinking about his next role. He was busy covering up a real-life play that was far more complex. At home, he had his legal wife, Andrea Townsley. But simultaneously, he was maintaining a separate household with another woman named Nancy Bruner. With the agility of an A-list actor, Ben managed to run these 2 marriages parallel to each other for decades, without them ever colliding. You can picture Ben, with his confident, charming smile, bouncing between two families, splitting himself in half to satisfy his emotional needs and personal lusts. This deception wasn't an accident. It was the result of a man who always craved possession, who needed to be enveloped by more than just one option. When the truth finally exploded, the media was left utterly stunned by the sophisticated lengths he went to clone himself in the bedroom and in family life, all for the thrill of running parallel relationships. Following the uproar of the bigamy scandal, Ben Vereen didn't choose a life of seclusion. At nearly 80 years old, he is still seen stepping out with the swagger of a seasoned artist. Those who have worked with him in recent years often whisper that, despite passing his peak years and facing the judgment of the public, the look in Ben's eyes when he faces a woman has never lost the spark of a predator. He seemingly can never stop searching for admiration and desire from beautiful women. For Ben, the Broadway stage was just a place to perform. Real life is where he continues to play the role of a man who constantly needs novelty and highly instinctual love affairs to prove he is still alive. 15. George Foreman, Iron Fists and Heavyweight Marriages. George Foreman isn't just known worldwide as the legendary former heavyweight boxing champion who possessed punches that could knock out any opponent in the ring. He is also a man with a heavyweight romantic life to match. With a history of 5 official marriages, George is not the poster child for monogamy. He is the embodiment of powerful instincts, a man who always needs connection, conquest, and the beautiful women who served as both his mental and physical anchors after stepping out of the ring. Behind the monumental career is a man who always craved being loved and surrounded by new women. In the 70s and 80s, when George Foreman was at the zenith of his boxing career, if you stepped into his locker room or resting area after a grueling training session, you would see a completely different side of Big George. At that moment, he wasn't just thinking about tactics for his next bout. He was drowning himself in fast, highly passionate affairs. Foreman was famous for never wanting to be alone. You could picture him, muscles bulging and eyes carrying the intense pressure of a warrior, instantly switching modes into a sweet, irresistible charmer to flirt with gorgeous women. The ferocity he showed in the ring mirrored how he operated in love. With 5 official marriages, every time he stepped into the ring of family life, it was a deeply emotional war. George wasn't afraid of change. He wasn't afraid to recommit to someone new, as if conquering a woman's heart was just like claiming a championship belt. Those close to him back then still talk about how he would attack the hearts of beauties with the unshakable confidence of a champion, making it impossible for them to refuse. It was an addiction to renewal, an unquenchable thirst to find a new woman to validate his masculinity. Today, at 77, George Foreman has hung up his gloves, but the fire of his instincts has never truly gone cold. Although he found a peaceful harbor in his 5th marriage to Mary Joan Martelli in 1985, his vitality remains a focal point of admiration. People still see him carrying the aura of a true champion, his eyes retaining the razor-sharp edge of a man who has experienced every extreme of life. To George, life is a boxing ring he never wants to leave, and the hunger to be loved and connected remains the driving force that keeps him looking as sharp and spirited as a legendary player to this very day. 14. Pelé, the king of football and his off-pitch romantic goals. Pelé, the ultimate icon of global football, was not only the king on the pitch, but also an infamous playboy in his romantic adventures. Throughout his life, Pelé never bothered to hide the instincts of a man who hungered to be surrounded by stunning women. With 3 official marriages and a string of illegitimate children from whirlwind romances in his youth, Pelé was walking proof that fame and immense wealth always walk hand in hand with tireless physical desires. He didn't just play football, he played with love and deeply instinctual, carnal emotions. Flashback to the 70s, when Pelé was the most powerful name on the planet. After every breathtaking match, while his teammates opted to rest, Pelé turned the hotel into his own private domain. If you were at one of his private parties back then, you would see that the king of football was never alone. He was always the center of attention, surrounded by young, gorgeous models fighting for the gaze of the most powerful man in Brazil. Pelé's emotional state in those moments was the pure smugness of a conqueror. He didn't hesitate to throw money around, didn't hesitate to flirt, and actively turned these women into trophies on his journey. Those encounters in the dark weren't just a release, It was an addiction Pelé nurtured his entire life. He once admitted in a documentary about himself, "I had so many affairs that I can't even remember the faces of all the women who passed through my life." It was the confession of a man who always let lust lead the way, a guy who constantly needed fresh warmth to fuel the fire of his own pride. Right up until the final years of his life, Pelé proved that his thirst for youth showed absolutely no signs of cooling down. In 2016, at the age of 76, when his body had begun to show the deep scars of time and illness, Pelé decided to tie the knot for the third time with Marcia Aoki, a beautiful businesswoman, 32 years his junior. The image of the king of football leaning on a cane, yet staring passionately at his vibrant, youthful bride on their wedding day, said it all. Marcia wasn't just a life partner. She was the ultimate source of vitality that helped him maintain the prowess of a player before leaving this world. For Pelé, even while standing at death's door, he still needed a young beauty by his side. It was his way of declaring that even if time robbed the strength from his legs, the conquering desire and masculine instinct of a legend would forever remain an addiction that never truly ends. 13. Gladys Knight, the Empress's ageless thirst for love. An artist's instinct seemingly prevents Gladys Knight from ever enduring loneliness. Surviving 3 broken marriages, she has proven that her desire for love and physical intimacy has never been eroded by time. In her late 50s, instead of settling down, the Empress of Soul decided to infuse her life with youthful vitality by walking down the aisle for the 4th time with William McDowell, a man 14 years her junior. Even now, at 82, she continues to enjoy the sweet fruits of this intense addiction to romance, living proof of a magnetic allure that crushes all age barriers. 12. Harry Belafonte, the dashing leading man who chased beauties his entire life. As one of the most prominent sex symbols of the 20th century, Harry Belafonte's romantic life was completely dominated by primal desires. The urge of lust was so powerful that he once callously abandoned his pregnant first wife to pursue a new harbor of sensuality. But the most shocking chapter came in 2008. At the ripe old age of 81, with his body withering, this dashing star still couldn't live without the warmth of a woman and decided to marry photographer Pamela Frank, a beauty significantly younger than him. For Harry, romance was the very oxygen that kept him breathing. 11. Billy Dee Williams, the predatory instincts of a sex symbol. Billy Dee Williams, the dashing Lando of the Star Wars universe, was once a sex symbol craved by millions of women, and he himself was a true addict in the game of love. 3 legal marriages were merely a flimsy facade hiding countless fleeting carnal adventures behind the glitz and glamour. Though he filed for divorce from his third wife in 1993, the power of connection and sensual desire dragged him right back. At 87, his romantic history, teeming with beautiful women, remains proof of a man who has never stopped hungering for beauty. 10. George Clinton, the wild thirst of the funk mastermind. George Clinton is the most vivid embodiment of the explosive, boundary-free sexual lifestyle of the 1970s. This funk pioneer was never without smoking hot bodies and endless, hedonistic parties surrounding him. Dozens of children with countless different women were the direct byproduct of a lifestyle driven entirely by wild lust. Today, at 83, his romantic fire burns as hot as ever as he remains tied to Carlon Thompson Clinton, a wife decades his junior. George proves that his funk bloodline and carnal cravings are immortal. 9. Buddy Guy, blues melodies and scorching affairs. Blues legend Buddy Guy didn't just use music to soothe souls. He used beautiful women to satisfy the cravings of his flesh. His romantic history is packed with fleeting flings along his touring routes. Refusing to succumb to old age, at 55, he plunged into a second marriage with Jennifer, a woman bursting with youth and significantly younger than him. Though this romance fell apart in 2002, it exposed the true nature of an artist always starved for the stimulation and warmth of young girls to sustain his masculine prowess. 8. Jim Brown, the aggressive predator, and an 18-year age gap marriage. Former NFL superstar Jim Brown was a notorious playboy with ferocious and aggressive sexual instincts. His private life was plagued by scandals of abuse, assaulting mistresses, and countless nights of endless debauchery. His craving for young bodies never cooled down. The proof lies in 1997, when, having sailed past his 60s, he used his power and lethal charm to marry Monique Brown, a model 18 years his junior. Jim Brown was a true apex predator who constantly needed flesh to assert his dominance. 7. Sidney Poitier, the deception behind a gentleman's facade. Sidney Poitier was always hailed as the gold standard of a proper gentleman, but in reality, he was merely a mortal brought to his knees by lust. The prime example of this hard-to-kick addiction was his secret blazing 9-year affair with actress Diane Carroll while both were still married to other people. Sidney risked his entire reputation just to drown in that illicit warmth. This underground scandal stripped away the truth. Beneath the perfect facade, physical desire was always the one pulling the strings. 6. Chuck Berry, the dark corners of twisted pleasures. Chuck Berry had a wife of 68 years, but behind that lay one of the most twisted and dark sexual histories in entertainment. He wasn't just unfaithful, he was a genuinely deviant sex addict. From being arrested for transporting an underage girl across state lines to satisfy his lust, to the shocking scandal of installing hidden cameras to spy on women in the restrooms of his own restaurant, the monumental career of the king of rock and roll was forever stalked by a sick, uncontrollable, and insatiable desire. 5. Bill Cosby, the monster masked as America's dad. Bill Cosby possesses the darkest rap sheet on this list. Despite being legally married since 1964, Cosby was actually a predatory sex addict, masquerading as a wholesome comedian. His thirst for lust was so malicious that he used sedatives to drug and sexually abuse over 60 women over several decades. Hidden behind that friendly smile was a man utterly incapable of controlling the beast inside him, using the most despicable methods to exploit the youth of innocent women. 4. Diana Ross, the power play of sex and beauty. Diana Ross didn't just use her voice to conquer the world. She used her lethal allure to manipulate the most powerful men. She navigated 2 marriages, had 5 children, and accumulated a long list of blazing romances, from tycoon Berry Gordy to wild rocker Gene Simmons. For Diana, romance wasn't just an emotion, it was power, a form of doping to assert her status. Even as she enters her 80s, her magnetic instinct and her craving to be craved by men show no signs of fading. The romantic nomad. Oscar-winning actor Louis Gossett Jr. is a prime example of an inability to resist the temptation of novelty. He went through 3 legal marriages, yet no marriage certificate possessed the strength to bind his wandering feet. Louis's private life was a long string of fleeting relationships, all-night parties, and changing lovers like clothes. His desire for conquest was so massive that fidelity became a luxury he could never grasp. 2. Sly Stone, drowning in parties and lust. Sly Stone turned his life into an endless hedonistic party. The frontman of Sly and the Family Stone was a devout follower of a debauched lifestyle where music, substances, and sex fused into one. He tore through countless women, sowed his seeds everywhere, and left ruined marriages in his wake. Even with snow-white hair at 81, his wild romantic history and legendary nights of orgies remain a mythic tale, confirming a wrecked ego completely addicted to extreme physical thrills. 1. Bobby Womack, the pinnacle of moral decay. Though he passed away at 70, Bobby Womack is the perfect climax to a list filled with people who let carnal lust blind their reason. His addiction to romance was so depraved that just 3 months after his close friend Sam Cooke was shot dead, a 21-year-old Bobby rushed to marry his late friend's widow. But the cruelty of his lust didn't stop there. This marriage ended in gunfire when his wife discovered Bobby was secretly sleeping with her own 18-year-old daughter, his stepdaughter. This earth-shattering incident is the ultimate proof that when the beast inside roars, every moral boundary is crushed to dust. What do you think about these notorious legends? Is draining youthful romances in one's golden years the ultimate privilege of wealth and fame, or just a desperate attempt by people who refuse to accept that they've grown old? Which playboy or queen on this list shocked you the most with their romantic history? Drop a comment down below so we can break it down. If you found this video gripping, don't forget to hit like and share it with your best friends. And make sure to hit subscribe and the notification bell so you don't miss the most shocking entertainment secrets in our upcoming videos.